China has been sued in some U.S. courts for coronavirus compensation, even though Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi called the lawsuits frivolous and shoddy in a recent press conference. But from a professional perspective, does the United States or lawyers in the U.S. have hard evidence to support the lawsuits or even the legal basis to sue another sovereignty country?
With regard to the U.S. attempted suing the Chinese government, my conclusion is that it is groundless. It is without any valid legal basis for a number of reasons. First, China has not breached any international obligations. Talking about international obligations, we need to consider one, the United Nations Charter. Under the obligation, the Charter of the World Health Organization and also its health regulations, China does have an obligation to report when there is a public health emergency of international concern, and that is the obligation of all the members of the WHO. The obligation requires that when a member concerned has such a health issue, the member needs to report to the WHO. Then what kind of disease we talk about? The health issue must be an emergency. Secondly, the health issue must be of international concern. That is, must have international repercussions. And who is going to make such a decision? The WHO member. As a member of the WHO, China needs to assess whether the occurrence of the disease, in this case, is coronavirus, would have the international consequence or not, whether it has international repercussions or not. Otherwise, it does not have an obligation to report. As this virus was new, and it is still new, it is still foreign to the international community because it is changing. That is the nature of this virus. Then when China first facing this issue, the Chinese government needed to assess whether it has the international concern or not. And that takes some time. But the decision must be an honest decision. Decision must be made in good faith. So long as China can prove that its decision-making was in good faith, its assessment was in good faith, it was an honest assessment, that was good enough. Even if China made a mistake in assessing the repercussion of the coronavirus, it has not breached any international obligations because a wrong judgment does not give cause to any claim to damages. A wrong judgment, as we always make mistakes, does not constitute a breach of international obligations. So, in a word, China needed some time to assess whether this emergency would constitute the international concern. And as the virus was completely novel, completely foreign to the whole mankind, China needed some time. Otherwise, think about this. Suppose China once had a case or maybe two, and then reported to the WHO saying, well, now we have emergency issue, which is of international concern. And later on, it proved that it was not such a big issue. It would be ridiculous. That's why the health regulations of the WHO requires members to report once they know that there is such an issue. So this is the legal basis. They don't have the legal basis. And then how about the jurisdiction of the American court? Of course, whenever you sue someone, whether there is a basis is one thing. The other one is the jurisdiction. Does the American court have jurisdiction over foreign countries? And that involves a principle of sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity principle has been in place for more than 400 years. It is still recognized by every sovereign country, including the United States. According to this principle, sovereign states may not and could not, should not be sued in a local court. The United States and some other countries in recent years, over the last 40 years, starting from the 70s of the last century, they initiated a restrictive sovereign immunity theory. According to this theory, when a sovereign government engages in commercial activities, then they say, well, if you are doing business, you should be treated as a business person. And therefore, sovereign immunity would not apply. And that is the essence, the restrictive theory of sovereign immunity. Even according to this theory, the U.S. court does not have jurisdiction over the Chinese government because the handling of public health issues is a function of the government, is a public function of the government, is a public function of a sovereign state. That has nothing to do with commerce. Therefore, the U.S. court does not and should not have any jurisdiction over China. That's why I think from the legal basis point of view, from jurisdiction point of view, China should not have been sued in any court in the world.
You mentioned sovereign immunity. We know under international laws, countries as sovereign equals. But experts mentioned the highly controversial amendments in the United States about a decade ago for removing Saudi Arabia's immunity for its role in 9/11. So amid deteriorating U.S.-China relations, will such move happen again? How will this define U.S. reputation for respecting international law?
Well, first, this pandemic is different from 9/11. This is not a man-made problem for the world. Secondly, China is not Saudi Arabia. China is a strong enough country to defend itself. Also, the U.S. interests are deeply rooted in China. The Chinese interests are also deeply rooted in the United States. If the United States is going to do something, and of course China can do something in return, the countermeasures are available. This having been said, I do not mean that the United States will not do anything. Under the President Trump, the U.S. government may do anything. I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't think even President Trump knows whether he's going to do anything or not at the moment. He may say he's going to do something this morning, but don't wait till tomorrow. In the evening, he may change his mind. That's him.
As you mentioned, actually, Trump has repeatedly said he will seek damages from China for COVID-19 losses in the United States. Is this part of Republicans' ham-handed propaganda campaign, to blame China for everything? How do you assess current U.S.-China policy?
Well, certainly it does have something to do with the U.S. election, that's for sure, because the U.S. government, the Trump administration, has been doing so badly with regard to the coronavirus, and that is being seen by the whole world. And of course, the U.S. wants to shift the blame to other countries. Logical country to be blamed for would be China. I wouldn't be surprised if they go even further in this direction.
Some say the United States blundered badly when dealing with the outbreak. Also, you mentioned that as well. And some of its mistakes, censoring doctors, journalists, and abusing power to get things done over opposition parties, reflect increasingly oppressive rule of Trump administration. Do you think they have a point? Is current U.S. government more authoritarian than ever?
Definitely. Totally agree. I think the difference between the current government administration and the previous administration is that in the previous administrations, at least the leaders of the U.S. government try to play the role as leaders. They say, well, we're the leaders, and at the same time, we share the responsibilities, and we share, our burden, the burden of the world. Current administration of the United States always holds the U.S. interests above others. And that is something a leader should not do. Once a leader says, listen, you guys do everything for me, my interests should be first, then that leader would have lost his leadership.
What you've mentioned gave us a brief picture about current China-U.S. relations. It seems that a lot of challenges for the two. Then, as one of China's top political advisors, what's your suggestions this year for China's U.S. policy to better cope with U.S. Cold War mentality and U.S.-China relations in the years to come?
Well, definitely. Right now, the China-U.S. relationship is not the best time in history. But at the same time, this world is still highly globalized. The coronavirus proves that point. In the years to come, if China and the United States cooperate, both countries will benefit. The whole world will benefit. If any country takes a different direction, both countries will suffer and the whole world will suffer. In my view, globalization does have ups and downs. The U.S. may do something to damage the China-U.S. relation. But in the long run, I think the better relationship between the two countries is beneficial to all.
From a bigger picture, Wang Yi also said China has done everything in the open with clear conscience to help other countries to battle against the virus. Has China's role in the international community changed since the outbreak? What role has China played and will play in the post-pandemic world?
First of all, China needs to better tell its story to the whole world. China has done a lot, but China has not been able to fully explain to the international community of what it has done, of what its intention. I think that is something China needs to improve, namely to explain its position, to tell its own story to the world in a language, in a manner that could be understood, could be appreciated by the rest of the world. Secondly, with regard to China's role, I think China is doing the right thing, that is to help the people, to help the world. When others need their assistance, you offer their assistance. In traditional Chinese culture, those who offer assistance do not expect any return, should not have return in mind. And that is a very fundamental difference between the Chinese culture and the Western culture, between the Chinese value and the Western value. Because according to Western culture and Western value, if someone does something for other people, there must be something in return. Otherwise, one should not do it. The Chinese culture is different. According to Chinese moral standards, a good person should always consider to do something for other people without expecting anything in return. And this Chinese culture obviously has a lot to do, has very much influenced the Chinese foreign policy. But we need to explain that.